On my 25th birthday in America, I got a phone call from my stepdad, and thinking he was calling to wish me happy birthday, but he actually called to let me know that my mum had liver cancer. 7 weeks later, she passed away. When she passed away, in a 7-week period from that day, these things happened. It was just crazy. My stepdad went out on his first social outing a couple of weeks after my mum's funeral and had a fair bit to drink. He was obviously grieving and I guess angry. He got into a fight with the guy that was at my mum's funeral, put him into a headlock, and the guy died. So my stepdad's on a murder charge. I'm a material witness against him. I'd left early, came home and told me what had happened. So now I'm a witness for the police and the prosecution against my own stepdad.
Our guest today is Tony Hughes, a globally recognised B2B sales expert with over 35 years of leadership experience across multinational organisations. As co-founder and CEO of Sales IQ Global, he has helped some of the world's leading brands transform how they sell, combining modern strategy with technology-driven approaches.
And then this last book, SENTIENT, that was 4 years of research and 2 years of writing, and I published that in November 2025. So it's very recent, and that's my first book that's a suspense thriller. It's just pure fiction. The best speakers I remember weren't the most professional or polished or eloquent. They were the ones that just had the biggest emotional impact on me.
Welcome back to Beyond the Keynote. I'm excited today because I'm speaking to another fellow Aussie from Sydney, Australia. Tony Hughes is here. He is a keynote speaker, best-selling author and trainer. Tony, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much, Carmen. I really appreciate the invitation, and I'm very excited about having a conversation with you.
Same, especially because we've had a little pre-banter here, and I know, keep listening everyone, because Tony has some very cool things to discuss with us, especially his new fiction book that launched late last year, which is called Sentient, Meet Your Maker. I won't give everything away now because we'll be discussing it near the end of the podcast, but AI definitely features in this one, and it's a fiction book, so all the filmmakers out there, we think this one needs to get to Netflix one day. So, Tony, tell us though, because we've got a huge journey that has happened, no doubt, for you to get to where you are today. I know you've done some incredible speaking gigs as well in your lifetime, and you've taught so many people how to be exceptional salespeople. When you were a little boy though, do you remember when people asked you, when adults would say, what do you want to be when you grow up? Do you remember what you used to answer?
I can't remember what I used to answer, but what I'm very clear about is that I really had no idea. I remember when I left school, I had no idea what I wanted to do. My mother ended up getting me an interview at the bank, so I ended up working in the bank, really because it was the first thing that came along where they offered me a role. So I spent my first 2 years in my work life working for a bank before I escaped.
And how old were you when you were working in the bank?
Well, I actually left school at the end of year 10, so I didn't do my higher school certificate. I never went to university, but I've ended up lecturing at 3 different universities.
Good on you.
And publishing books and being published by the American Management Association. So I'm one of those stories from the School of Hard Knocks where I got a lot of real world experience.
Yeah, incredible. So when you worked at the bank at a young age, and then you said you got out of there, which is good. Take me back though to when you were younger, because you've spoken on some pretty amazing stages. Were you just that natural child who loved being in the spotlight and was an extrovert, or were you a shy type of person that people would never have expected to make it to the stage?
Well, believe it or not, Carmen, I was actually a shy introvert with a terrible stutter as a child.
Okay.
So I've had a pretty difficult background for someone that's ended up doing a lot of public speaking.
Yes.
And I think for a lot of my adult life too, I've really battled with the thing that I think especially many men go through, which is imposter syndrome. So this whole thing of thinking, am I going to get promoted to the level where I'm going to fail? Is this the day that I get found out? And I know not everybody really suffers from that, but I've just worked incredibly hard in my life to become good at the challenges that I've taken on. And when I left the bank, I ended up working for my father. My parents actually separated and divorced when I was quite young, and my father moved from Sydney up to Queensland. So for those that aren't from Australia, it's sort of the distance of San Francisco to LA. So he moved into another state, and I reconnected with him when I was about 19, when I was working for the bank and got transferred to northern New South Wales and to Lismore. Used to drive up on the weekends and see him and reconnect. And he convinced me to leave the bank and come and work for him in his business. He had a hydraulic engineering business where they manufactured construction equipment. And he convinced me to leave the bank and join him. What I came to understand is that, and I loved my dad deeply, and when he passed away, we're on great terms. And, you know, he said to me once that, you know, all you need in life to be successful is just one person who'll believe in you. And he really believed in me. But he was bipolar, he was Mensa level genius, and he was an alcoholic. You know, so that's a really difficult combination. And I ended up having to take over the business when he got hospitalized when I was only 20. We had about 15 employees, and so I had a baptism of fire in the business world. We built the company really successfully. We achieved 85% market share with the products we were selling here in this market. We sold the company, and I went and took it to America with a business partner, and I spent a few years in the States, and that was a really wild ride.
I bet it was. Well, we need to hear about some of that. So first of all, I'd love to know, you had to take over the company probably before you were ready to do it, or you would have felt that way anyway, it sounds like. So what are some of the lessons you learned pretty fast, I would assume, when you first took over?
When I first took over the business, probably the big lesson is that cash flow is everything. So making sure you stay on top of cash flow, making sure you understand whether you're really profitable or not. In a growing business, it's very easy to not have clarity on those things and end up putting yourself in a serious problem. And then when I went to America, the big lesson I learned in America was that it's not just about product and product market fit. It's about your ability to sell and market. It's amazing if you look back through the business history of the world, how it's not always the very best product that succeeds. It's those who are able to market well and get a product to market effectively that end up becoming the leaders. So lots of important lessons in America, and I might tell you this story because I know you've wanted to know about my background and what's made me the person I am today is some context for becoming a speaker. But on my 25th birthday in America, I got a phone call from my stepdad. Had a great relationship with my stepdad. We got a call from him thinking he was calling to wish me happy birthday, but he actually called to let me know that my mum had liver cancer. Wow. About 5 weeks later, I was back living in Sydney. 7 weeks later, she passed away. We nursed her at home until the end. It was very fast. But when she passed away, in a 7-week period from that date, these things happened. It was just crazy. My stepdad went out on his first social outing a couple of weeks after my mum's funeral and had a fair bit to drink. He was obviously, grieving and I guess angry, but he got into a fight with the guy that was at my mum's funeral, put him into a headlock, and the guy died. So my stepdad's on a murder charge. I'm a material witness against him because when I'd left early, he came home and told me what had happened. So now I'm a witness for the police and the prosecution against my own stepdad. So he's on a murder charge. My sister tries to commit suicide, suffering from depression after my mum died. She lost her best friend. Lots of conflict with my stepdad and her. My wife at the time left me. We lost the business in America. Our biggest customer went bankrupt. Our joint venture manufacturing partner also declared Chapter 11. And a company we were OEMing, so we were white labeling our product to a massive global manufacturer. I won't say who they are, but they air freighted our product back to Japan where we did not have patents, and they reverse engineered it and copied it. They fired the product manager that had signed a letter of intent with us in the States and said, if you have a problem with any of this, feel free to talk to any of our 17 lawyers here in America. The dog got run over, the car got stolen. And with all of that going on back in Sydney, I really couldn't go back to America, so I needed to stay here. When we'd sold the company in Australia, I'd signed a 12-year non-compete for the period that we were receiving royalties from the sale of the company. There was an upfront payment and royalties. So I thought, I can't go back into the industry I know. I need to stay in Sydney. A big lesson I learned in America was that if you can't personally sell and market, you're nowhere as an entrepreneur or as a business leader. You're just kidding yourself. So I thought, I don't know what I want to do, but I need to learn the skill of selling. So I got a job in sales. It was kind of crazy. You can imagine the negative mindset I had with no direct sales experience. I decided I wanted to do business to business selling, B2B selling.
Yeah.
And I got a job in the radio paging industry in the very early days of that industry. So this is a radio pager for those who forget what they are.
Yes, thanks for the prop. Anyone that's just listening, you need to look at the video.
It was right around the time that mobile phones were coming out. If you think about that first Wall Street movie with those big phones.
Yeah, big brick phones.
Yeah. So anyway, the company took a gamble. They had 110 salespeople in the company nationally. I was just awful in the beginning, but I had an amazing mentor, my actual sales manager who mentored me, coached me, went out one day a week with me on the road. He didn't rescue me. He helped me learn lessons. And although I was awful at the beginning, in a very short period of time, I became the #1 seller in the entire company and set records that have never been broken at the company or in the industry. Selling to IBM at 70% higher prices than they were paying the competition. And they're still a customer today, if you can believe this. This is over 30 years ago, because there's still a role for radio paging today, even though it's very niche. So that was how I got into sales, and I just relentlessly, in every company I went to, kept getting promoted into management. And the frustration was I came to realize that you make a lot more money and have a lot less hassles as an individual contributor. Because when you become a manager, you get paid at the average, even though obviously your base salary goes up significantly. But the opportunity for overachievement in terms of rewards really diminishes. You have a lot more headaches and hassles, and the reward for overcoming them is ever more headaches and hassles. But I tend to change industries. So I went from telecommunications to the computer industry, and then eventually into the software industry, that pays incredibly well. And I ended up running the Asia Pacific region for North American multinational software companies. And about 14 years ago, I decided to leave the corporate world and go out on my own and give back to the profession that really helped me, which was professional selling.
Wow. Well, that is an incredible journey. Lots of challenges in that journey, obviously, but wow. Now, I'm sure there's many leaders and entrepreneurs listening to this who would love to know how you sell 70% higher than someone's been paying and keep the customer for many, many years. Do you have any tips that you're happy to share that maybe are included in some of the speaking that you do currently?
The key to success is to put ourselves in the customers, or in the instance of public speaking, in the audience's shoes. Like, our job is to serve our audience or serve our customer. And what was important for IBM was the quality and reliability of the service. So if you think about IBM, especially back in the days before the cloud, when everyone's running mainframes in their own data centers, if a big computer goes down, the cost to that customer organization, so IBM's customer, the cost to them is huge. What they had is service level agreements with IBM that an engineer would be on site within 20 minutes. So you have to be able to get a message to an engineer in the field instantly so they can get themselves to the customer and on site within that 20-minute period. And the crazy thing is those engineers, support engineers, are typically working at in another data center, and radio signal really struggles to get into data centers. There's a lot of, in essence, unintentional RF shielding. So the quality of the service was everything to IBM. It was not about price. For everybody that's watching or listening to this, when you're selling in a business-to-business environment, especially into large organizations, it's not their money that they're spending, it's the company's money, but it is their brand and their reputation and their career at risk. They do not want to make a mistake. They care about value for money, not price, and they want to make sure that they're making a safe decision. And this is a crazy story, but we were shortlisted And I was in the CEO's office of my company. I'm the rep. This is a crazy story. I'm arguing to the CEO to not discount the price. Like, let's stay the course. Don't panic. Right? They've gone quiet on us. We're worried that maybe we're going to lose the deal. I said, I know we've done a great job. We've built confidence. They understand why we're best value for money and lowest risk, right? They want to buy from us. I am convinced of it. And if we're too much more expensive, they'll come back. They'll run a best and final offer process or something, right? And my leaders didn't believe me. If we'd lost the deal, I would have been fired on the spot.
Yes.
But we held the course. Normally what happens in sales is the salesperson is trying to convince their boss.
Yes.
We have to discount to win the deal, and the boss is thinking, well, if you've done your job properly, we wouldn't have to discount to this degree.
Yes.
And I definitely acknowledge that if you're selling something that's perceived as a commodity, then it often is about price and availability. But if you're selling something that's truly differentiated in its service levels or the architecture or the way the solution is built, then you should be able to command a premium. And IBM have been happy forever with the level of service, right? Because the network they were on had been oversold, and a lot of messages were getting queued and not getting delivered on time, and time was everything. And we made the commitment to IBM as a company. We will not oversell our bandwidth, our frequency, with too much traffic, right? Which is the key thing that protects them. But obviously, if we've got fewer people on the limited bandwidth, there's a higher cost per user. But it's essential for them to ensure that messaging is not queued, that everything gets delivered really quickly, and they understood that.
Yes. What an incredible story. And I was very lucky. I worked at a large corporate for over 18 years prior to running Illuminated Story. And we had a sales trainer that worked with us. He was from the UK, but he was Scottish.
Very hard to understand.
Lots of great jokes and a fun accent. Anyway, he taught us it's not about the price. Do not sell on price, sell on value. And I was in a high service style company. We prided ourselves on our service. And yeah, it's absolutely right. I love the example you just gave. And you are so on point that most of the time it is the salesperson saying, I can't sell it at that price. We have to discount it. You don't understand how hard it is. And I love that it was the salesperson telling the CEO, hold. Do not drop the price, because as soon as you drop the price, that's the new value. So, you've got to hold your price. I love brands that just don't discount ever, because that's what the product's worth. And it doesn't matter whether I buy it now or I buy it next week, it's still going to be worth the same amount. And you can actually feel ripped off as the person buying if a brand is going to go on sale. You try and hold off because it's not worth that, because they've told you that through discounting. So love all of those philosophies and that you made the CEO hold off. All right. So sales has become your incredible expertise. It sounds like you're a bit of a unicorn in that area. So tell us about, when did you start getting asked to speak, or how did speaking come into your career?
Well, my journey with public speaking, obviously as a leader of companies, so I was the CEO for Asia Pacific. We go to a lot of industry events where we had a booth and we're a sponsor, and maybe we'd get a speaking slot, so I'd get up and speak in that context. So my speaking journey really started there. When I went out on my own, what would happen is I'd do a lot of sales. I still do a lot of sales training for organizations, including Adobe, Salesforce, Workday, SAP, a lot of big enterprise software companies. And they typically have annual sales kickoffs that they'll run typically in North America. So I was invited to go and be a keynote speaker at these sales kickoffs. So I've gone and done a lot of that in Vegas and the States and around Australia. So that's really been the journey, and I've keynoted on particular topics for companies like Salesforce, just around professional selling or sales strategy or trends that are happening in the market. So probably my biggest audience was about 8,000 people at the ICC in Sydney.
Okay. So tell us about some of these amazing speaking gigs you've had. And maybe, I don't know if you remember the first one, given that you were a bit of a shy introvert that had a stutter, how did you feel when you got invited to speak? And did you do anything to try and prepare yourself to get on that stage?
I did lots to prepare myself. I think that's the key of taking nerves and turning nerves into a force for good. To make that energy positive for us. And, the key is obviously being thoroughly prepared. I've always believed you don't want to over rehearse because then it can maybe be wooden, but definitely rehearse what you're doing. Definitely be clear about the journey you want to take your audience on. Obviously, storytelling is really important. Although my personal view is that storytelling can be overdone. I've listened to lots of speakers who obviously know it's all about telling stories, and you think really like another story that they really struggle to sort of create some relevance, and or people telling stories that's really just all about heroing them. So the thing I've just been focused on is, are there actionable takeaways and real value for everybody in the audience? And yes, we need to entertain and we need to inform, but the truth is, what's going to be the impact of the time that people invest in really listening with us? And, my view is that we all want to make money and be successful, but much deeper than that is we all want to have an impact. We all want to have a positive impact. And that's what really drove me to learn to get out of my own way. One of my biggest lessons I've personally learned in life is you have to get out of your own way. You have to get past all of your own hang-ups and insecurities. One of the big lessons I learned in selling is that it's not about me and my success. It's not about me crushing quota. It's not about me making the sale. It's not about me crushing the competition. It's about none of those things. It's about making a positive difference in the lives of others, in the lives of the customer. It's about figuring out whether what I offer is a really good fit for them, whether we really are best value for money for them and the lowest risk. And if I am, then pursue it with everything I've got because it's in their best interests.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. I love that because, and this is where sales and speaking, as you said earlier, really do align, because a good salesperson asks about what the customer wants and needs and understands their world before they do any selling. And a good speaker does a similar thing with the audience. You research, you figure out what's going to add value to them. What could I speak on that will change their life, that will help them implement something tomorrow that's going to make a difference to them. And it's interesting, you spoke about storytelling, and I agree, everyone knows that storytelling's a thing and that you should do stories, and sometimes the story is just not relevant at all to the message. Yeah. Always start with what is the goal in terms of how am I helping my audience, and then let's look at what key points need to get across to do that. And then what stories are really relevant to bring to life, because the whole point of the story is that we feel something when we hear a story. Yeah. And when we feel it in our bodies, that's when we remember it far more than just understanding logically what the person is saying.
So true.
So it sounds so Salesforce runs some pretty amazing events, I believe. I haven't been able to watch one myself, but I hear they do it very, very well. So was that the stage where it was 8,000 was a different one, was that right?
No, that was Salesforce.
Oh, that was Salesforce. So tell us about that experience. Did it feel different to you to speak in front of 8,000 people than it would to speak in front of a couple of hundred?
It was a really wild situation, actually. They'd segmented, like for those who don't know, the ICC in Sydney, the big convention centre, is a giant hall. And what Salesforce needed to do, because it was all streamed into themes, as opposed to live streamed online. What they did is they had giant curtains that separated the environment to stop noise bleeding over into other big areas. They did a thing of silent disco, so everyone's wearing headsets. Actually, on my speaker website, tonyhughes.com.au, I've got a picture and a recording of this keynote. You can see everyone's wearing these headsets with red lights on them. But the thing that was really wild is, I'm up there keynoting and I can't hear my voice echoing in the auditorium. Everyone's got these silent disco headsets on. It was quite disconcerting. It was a really strange environment to be speaking in.
So, okay, so were you speaking into a microphone, but there was no foldback. So were you just hearing your voice as if it wasn't in a microphone?
Correct. So there were no foldback speakers on stage. I had a little exercise I wanted people to do. I wanted them to turn to the person beside them and do a little role play that I do when I speak. But they obviously had to take off their headphones and then do the role play. And then I'm trying to get everyone's attention to come back to me speaking, but they've got their headphones off, right? So it's interesting as a speaker. Like, I always make sure I turn up early, always try and get an understanding of the room, the equipment, meet the sound engineer. I've got a lot of sibilance in my voice when I speak, so you can dial that out. It's about between 5 and 8 kilohertz is where you can dial out typical sibilance in someone's voice. I'll ask the sound person to do that. Often they don't understand that themselves, but I'll help them do it.
So tell us, so for the audience that doesn't quite know what you're talking about, talk us through that.
So sibilance is the noise when people speak, and some people suffer from the sibilance problem in their voice than others. It's like, I used to think, why is it on the radio or with newsreaders? In the past, it's very different today, but in the past when I was growing up, it's like all men. Like, this is so sexist. But it's just that the deep resonant tone of a voice is just it's more easy to listen to. It's more pleasant to listen to than someone with a higher pitched voice. So for women who speak, often they have to learn to try and lower the register of them speaking. It sounds more authoritative. It's easier to listen to. And although that's a sexist thing, it's just the reality. So sibilance in a voice is really annoying for the audience, and because it's just an offensive sound. So if you can dial it down, it's due to the shape of our teeth and our mouth. It's not a thing you can typically fix, but the sound person can try and dial that out. So if you're a speaker and you've got a sibilance problem, it's typically in the 5 to 8 kilohertz range. You just go to the sound person and say, have you got an EQ, with your little sound desk? Can we find 5 to 8 kilohertz and just bring the gain down on that frequency, and that'll solve the problem. The other thing, I do want to go to venues, and again, you'd think professional sound people would know not to do this, but sometimes I'll have the speakers in the room, that are beside you. Yeah. They need to be in front of you, facing away from you toward the audience, not behind you, because that creates this ringing sound feedback loop that can race away. So feedback is caused by allowing a microphone to be in front of a speaker. So for a lot of us that speak, you go to a hotel venue or something, they'll have speakers up in the ceiling. If you're standing under a speaker, like, you go, wow, I need to move away from here because that's going to create a feedback loop. You want the sound person to have the gain as low as they can on the desk. That's the overall power into the system, and have the volume as high as they can. If the gain's high and the volume's low, it's all being set up for feedback problems. If you've got speakers behind you or under you, you've got feedback problems. So they're all of the things that I try and actually look at when I go to a venue to try and solve those problems.
Absolute gold. Thank you for sharing all of that. And so how early would you normally try and get to the venue to fit in the sound check and checking all of these elements?
So if it's a big speaking gig, I might even go there the day before. I always ask to speak after a break, not immediately following another speaker. Right, because if it's after a break, you can get on stage, you can get set up, you can make sure that you're happy with anything, you can do a little sound check. So I can't always make that happen, but I'll always try and do that as well. So always get to the venue early, make the sound person your friend. It's really important. I mean, even putting on a lapel mic, I'll see people have a lapel mic on a certain position of their blouse or their shirt or their jacket. When they're looking at their slides, they're looking away from their microphone, so their voice keeps getting lost. You want the microphone on the side that you're turning to if you're going to be looking at slides or whatever you're doing as as well.
Yeah.
So all of those things make a difference. And as crazy as this sounds, wherever I can, I try and ditch the microphone, right? So if it's a room where I can just use my voice, I find a microphone is a barrier with the audience anyway, most of the time. So if you can avoid using it, it's a good thing.
Yeah. I think, it depends on the space and the acoustics in the space, but normally when you're over 50, heading towards 100 people, you probably need a microphone, but below that, you can absolutely project your voice. And as you said, it can feel more intimate and more connected to the audience without the microphone sound. But again, all of those 1%ers make a huge difference to how you come across. So listen intently for those of you who are listening, because all these little things. And I think sometimes when you're a new speaker, you feel like, oh, can I really ask that? Or can I really do that? Or am I being a diva? No, you're not, because you want to make sure that the audience gets the best experience possible when you're there. That's what you're doing it for. And all of these things make a huge difference. I get so annoyed, even as an audience member, when I'm at very well-renowned venues and the microphone's cut out, and constantly, not just once, like things happen and technology fails and all the rest of it, but when things are happening all the time, you think, how is this happening here? This is like a premier venue in this town and it shouldn't happen. And just like the sound crew should know to put the microphone in the spot where if the person's turning to their slide, they're going to be still heard. So all really, really great tips. So there's a lot of tips you've given us around sound, and is there anything else that you find that you check? I love that. So when you were speaking and the audience had their headphones on, did you know they would have that on before you got up, or was that a bit of a surprise at that time?
I'd been told in advance that that's how it would all work, but I had no opportunity to rehearse in that environment. So there was no opportunity to do that.
And you tried to do the exercise still, did you? Did you sort of not?
Yes.
Was it in the moment you were like, oh, this is going to be hard?
I knew it would be hard. I still did it anyway. It was all okay. It was all okay, but it was a little chaotic. Yeah. Hey, Carmen, the last thing about venues, because I agree with you, these alleged professional venues for running events, you go, who designed all of this? It's crazy. Yeah. But things like they'll have bright halogen lights right above the screen where you're trying to project slides, and the lights wash out all of the slides. So, and they don't have the lighting all zoned in a way where you can just dim the lights above the screens and still have the lights up elsewhere. So I always go and obsess about lighting in the room as well. So curtains and lighting, audio is really just all of the 101. And then obviously, for me, managing my nerves, what I just focused on was make sure I know my material, make sure I'm prepped. And I think speaking, my last tip for speakers is it's something in common with selling, is being successful is about the transference of emotion and belief. I've been watching Idol on TV at the moment, and I used to watch The Voice when it was on, and Britain's Got Talent and America's Got Talent. And the common thing I see with performers is the performers that win these competitions, the performers that have massive impact on their audience are the ones that transfer emotion. It's not about being able to sing, it's about being able to transfer emotion. Being able to sing is kind of your ticket to the dance, right? But how well things go all depends on can you transfer emotion. And I think having emotional resonance and a genuine level of belief in what you're speaking about in a very authentic way is the thing that makes all of the difference as a speaker, because the best speakers I remember weren't the most professional or polished or eloquent. They were the ones that just had the biggest emotional impact on me.
Yeah, I love that transfer of emotion and belief. So true. And I watch those shows too, the Idols and The Voice and all the things, and it's very interesting because sometimes someone can have a very technically beautiful voice, but they don't seem, I call it energy, they don't have any energy behind them in how they're delivering it to the audience, which is absolutely that transfer of emotion and belief that you're talking about. and so they're not as captivating as the others that do have that. So I love that advice. I was just thinking about some of the technicalities you were talking about before. I had a client who had to speak at the MCG, which is the Melbourne Cricket Ground. Which for anyone that's overseas, it's one of our major sporting venues in Australia. And he was a bit worried because I said, you've got to get to the sound team. You've got to do sound checks. And I said the same thing. They are your best friends. Make friends with them. Like, you want them to want to help you when you're up there if anything goes wrong. And he felt a bit awkward doing that. He felt like a bit of a diva. But he happened to, they had a comedian, a famous Australian comedian emceeing the event. And he was friends with him. He knew him quite well. And the comedian, he watched him. He would not go on because the mics in the sound check did not work. They kept cutting out. And he said, you need to fix this. I'm not going on until this is fixed. And the client of mine came back and reported, he's like, oh, Carmen, you'll never guess. Like, and then he did this and then he said that. And I'm like, see, I told you, you know. And I said, and you know why he was so adamant about it? Because if his punchline is said when the mic's cut out, the whole thing falls down. Like, the audience doesn't get the joke and they don't laugh, and the experience of the audience is completely killed. So it's okay for him, especially in one of the premier venues in Australia, to be asking for the microphones to work.
Well, Carmen, just for everybody listening to this, because I'm actually an amateur sound engineer myself. I do the sound desk at the church I go to. But I spoke in Vegas January last year in 2025, and I did a main keynote, and then I did a breakout session for about 120 people in a smaller room, and they had lots of these breakout sessions going on. And the sound person set the room up and everything worked, and then just left and said, if there's a problem, someone can just call me and I'll come back. What I did not realize is this sound person, because I had a mic up on stage and there was a mic for the audience, the two mics were set up on the same frequency. And what happened is when the other mic was turned on or being used, it would cut out my mic on the stage. Okay. So this problem of the mic cutting in and out and not working all of the time wasn't because the batteries weren't fully charged or the microphone was too far away from the base station receiver. It was that as soon as someone turned on the other mic, it killed my mic. And I didn't realize that until after this whole thing was over. So I ended up just turning my mic off and just not using a mic in the room. Yes. It was small enough where I could do that, but that's a thing to be aware of. And you would think a sound person would know to not put two mics in the room on this. And when the sound person came back and I nicely confronted them, they just acted like I was an idiot. Like, surely you would have looked at the microphones and seen that and known just have one on at a time. Right? So incredible, yeah.
Now we know why you know so much about sound. That's very handy. Well, I'll give one more story, because I think there are moments where, like you said, you just turned your microphone off, and so there's what I call the show must go on, and this is absolutely from my theatre training, because I grew up in theatre and studied it. I did a Bachelor of Performing Arts at Monash University, and when you're in live theatre, sometimes things happen. Someone completely forgets their lines, or a prop's not there, or whatever. Anything can go on, and you have to stay in character and you have to continue the show, and the audience can't know that anything has happened that shouldn't have happened. So as speakers, if you can have that same philosophy, it will go very well for you, because even though you know it hasn't gone to plan and it's not exactly what you'd prepared, the audience doesn't unless you tell them, unless you let them in on the secret. So the last time I spoke in Sydney just recently, I could see there was this big screen. It was a fairly small stage, but there was this big screen where everyone was going to project their slides, but I didn't have any slides. For this particular speech, I was going slideless. And so at the very beginning of the day, I was there early for setup. I'd flown in the day before, but I couldn't actually get into the venue because I had another event on, so I couldn't get in. But I said to the man setting up, I said, I know you're really busy right now. Just want to check in whether we can lift that screen when I go on. He's like, oh, yeah, it should be easy. There'll be a button. I'm like, great. So let him keep setting up, and then checked in again a little bit later. Oh, hi, have you had a chance to check whether the screen can go up? Oh, yeah, no. Yep, no, there'll definitely be a button. I'll get it done. I'm like, great. Thank you so much. And then I was going to be the third speaker. There was someone introducing the day, there was someone, and then there was me. So I'm looking at the screen and I'm thinking, I don't know that this screen's going to be able to go up. And so then it's the point where he's putting the lapel microphone on me, and I said, did you figure out how to put the screen up? He's like, oh, I didn't figure out how to put the screen up. I'm like, okay, that's fine. Can you just turn the slides off? Because they had, and you would have had this too, Tony, they had like the speak my name and my image and, the introduction thing. And I said, once you've done the introduction walk-up thing, can you just turn off the projector so it's at least a white screen behind me, which I think he managed to do, which was good. But there was this beautiful black curtain behind it, so it would have looked much better if the screen had been able to go up and the black curtain could have been behind me. But, and the wrong walk-up music started, so from the very start, I'm like, that's not right. And I'd chosen music that went with the theme of the story I was telling and all the things. But you're like, okay, well, that's it. This is what I'm walking up to. And the audience doesn't know. It's totally fine. It's irrelevant to my whole speech, but who cares? And the screen's going to be behind me. It would have looked better without it, but it's going to be okay. So sometimes the show must go on.
Yes. Yes. It's a great story.
Thank you. Now let's get on to your books. I know you've written multiple books, and I know we're going to talk a bit about the latest fiction one you've written. But before we get to that, tell us about some of the other books you've written and how that's helped your audience, where that's taken you in terms of speaking.
Well, just very briefly, because I think anyone who is a speaker has probably written a book or two. Like we all know that a book sort of helps with credibility. So over my shoulder, you can see the Joshua Principle. That was my first book. I'd been trying to write that book for 15 years before I published it, and I'd get frustrated, and then I'd dust it back off, and I'd have another go at getting it done. And as I'd reread what I'd written earlier, I just think, like this is just another piece of dross, like another person banging on about how to sell, do this, do that. There's a million of those books. So what I find in the world of professional selling is the books you can buy to help you improve your sales results typically fall into one of two camps in my mind. The self-enamored, narcissistic egomaniac who says, if you can be like me, you'll be successful.
Yes.
Have all of their anecdotes in their book, and very light on for sort of structure and things you can apply. And then the other sort are very dry textbooks. And I created methodologies around how to sell. And what I thought is, you know what? I need to tell a great, true story so that people are learning as they're engaged in a story. So what I did is I decided to write a story about a salesman who's about to get fired. He's got a broken relationship with his father, as I think many, especially men, maybe some daughters, but many men have a broken relationship with their dad for a while. And his father's a very successful CEO and wants to help his son, but his son Joshua doesn't want a bar of it, right? But the father helps his son find a mentor, and then you listen into their mentorship. It's a correspondence-based relationship, and the story's very emotional. I've had CEOs tell me that they were like flying back into Australia from overseas, finishing the book, and crying so much that the air crew kept coming up to them asking if they're okay. So, and it's in its 10th printing. It's done really, really well. But the sort of lesson of that book is tell wonderful. Like a lot of people thought the story was really true. It's fictional, but it reads like it's true. It reads like it's true. And there's a bit of me in all of the characters, which helped me write it well. So if you're going to do a book, I just say, don't make it all about yourself, but telling stories is really powerful. And then the next two books you can see at the top behind me, Tech Powered Sales and Combat Prospecting, are not like that. And then this last book, Sentient, over my shoulder here. That was 4 years of research and 2 years of writing, and I published that in November 2025. So it's very recent, and that's my my first book that's a suspense thriller. It's just pure fiction.
So cool. I love that you've written a complete fiction book. Now, tell us about Sentient, Meet Your Maker. I believe it's all to do with AI, is that right?
It is, and AI is more accurately described as machine intelligence because it's not really artificial at all. And we live in the era right now of narrow artificial intelligence where AI can do specialist tasks far better than humans. So we already have AI fighter pilots that win air-to-air combat against humans 100% of the time. We know that AI can navigate much better than a human. It can process accounts payable inside organizations. So there's many examples of AI being able to replace human workers. What we're moving toward is what they call AGI, artificial general intelligence, and that's where AI is better than humans in all areas. And it'll be reasoning-based orchestration is what I think really defines the era of AGI, and the experts believe that could be as soon as 2027, at the latest by 2035. And this revolution we're in, we've had industrial revolutions in the past where people, moved from agricultural, rural, farming communities into towns, where there were mills and some factories. And then as automation got to whole new levels with the production line, people had to move from rural communities into cities. And then automation started reducing the number of workers needed in rural communities anyway. And then as automation happened in the physical world, people then moved to knowledge work in offices. So they've gone from farms to towns to cities and moved from factories to offices. I'm honestly not sure what happens when people have to move away from office-based work, cognitive knowledge worker roles, because we can't all be baristas or work in the tourism industry. And now if you look at what's happening with robotics, I think all of us used to look at robots maybe 2 years ago and think, well, that'll never be able to do what a human does. The big problem in robotics was the hand, being able to do micro gripping and for the hand to work well, and also the brain. They've now solved both of those problems. And if you just jump online onto YouTube and search for latest AI robots, it'll blow your mind. They can dance, they can do martial arts. It's just incredible. So cognitive knowledge work is going to be disrupted very significantly, and much labor-based work is going to go away as well. So we've got a huge level of disruption that's coming in society, and we all know how COVID really damaged people. I mean, Carmen, you're from Victoria. Melbourne was the most locked down city on the face of the planet.
It was.
It did incredible psychological damage to the entire state and the community.
Yes.
But what had been leading up to that, even before COVID, was the rise of social media. And those social media algorithms already started really shaping people's brains and starting to divide and isolate people, even though it was meant to connect us. We got even further isolated and tried to seek connection online, but the algorithms, really kicked in, and there was a lot of propaganda and a lot of information control that really divided society like crazy. People getting cancelled for different opinions, people falling back into their tribes. But we all live in a bubble where content gets served to us that keeps nudging us toward a position that the algorithm thinks it can monetize with us, or the business or political leaders think they would like to push in order to shape opinion. Now AI is taking that to crazy new levels. I don't know whether you've seen a lot of these AI generated videos online, but it's becoming almost impossible already to tell what's fake and what's real.
Yeah.
So the world is in deep trouble. There's going to be a lot of unintended consequences that are going to happen as a result of this. And what I sought to do in the book is to alert people about the safety risks with machine intelligence if it's misaligned with humanity. So the book really seeks to address the issue of AI safety alignment and what it is that we could do to maybe make AI safe so that the machines and humanity can both thrive.
Wow. Well, that sounds like a very big story. I was telling Tony just before we jumped on together that I was talking to my auntie just recently, and she was talking about AI, and she said, oh, there's got to be a movie that comes out soon about how AI takes over humans and takes over the world. And Tony's written a book. So maybe we'll see this as a Netflix series one day. All right. Well, I'm just going to pause for a second, Tony, because my microphone's doing something strange. Can you hear it, your end?
Yeah, I was hearing like cicadas or something in the background.
Yes, same here. I'm just going to put a marker on that. We should be able to edit.
It's gone away. But by the way, I've found on my Mac, when I use the microphone in my Mac, if the fans start firing up, it causes that. But you've got a separate Shure mic, right, that you're using, a Rode mic, sorry.
A Rode mic,
Yeah, so
yeah.
you shouldn't have, I'm using a separate little Rode mic as well, but you shouldn't be having that problem. I don't know what's causing that.
I don't know either.
Is it at my end?
Hang on, if I do that, is that... No, it's not any better. No, I think it's something here, but I don't know what it is.
Okay.
I can hear myself back now.
Yeah.
But anyway, I'll keep going and hopefully we can just fix
Yes.
this in editing because it's been an amazing interview. But I'm going to jump back on. All right.
Hey, by the way, before you jump in, I've done a few keynotes around AI, and the big thing I've struggled with is it's such a negative topic in my mind, and people don't want negativity. They want to hear where's the hope, where's the positivity, and I've really struggled in finding that balance in my keynote. So I did a keynote to the entire leadership team of a big software company a couple of weeks ago, and I had a good balance of, how do we thrive in the age of machine intelligence as leaders? We all need to become a little cyborg. It was a positive message.
Yeah.
And what I said to them is, from a personal perspective point of view, if we're thinking about our own kids and what this means for society and the world, some things we need to be aware of. And they said, well, we want to know that. So they've got me, I'm going to be doing that as a separate thing for them soon. But
Okay.
yeah, I've really struggled with how do you balance the message when you've got a topic that's a bit
Yeah.
dense and dark and yeah.
Yeah. Oh, well, let's talk about that further when we finish the recording. But do you want me to ask you about that keynote? Do you want to talk about some of the positives?
No,
things
I'm conscious we've been going for a while. So if you want to start to wrap it up, that's all good as well.
Yeah, I don't mind if we can just do that little bit if you want to do a positive AI message.
Sure. Sure.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So we'll go from there. So Tony, have you done any speaking when it comes to AI as your core message recently?
Carmen, I have. I recently did a talk to 35 business leaders for a big multinational company for their whole Asia Pacific team. Because AI is disrupting their own industry. A lot of the big software as a service companies, tech companies, their share prices halved in early 2026 as people came to believe that AI is going to be able to basically vibe code enterprise applications, and a lot of these big software as a service companies, SaaS companies, are going to be in deep trouble. So I talked to them about what is AI, how does it actually work, what are the weaknesses of AI, and how do you create a nuanced, positive, elevated conversation with your customers, the leadership team within your own customer base and potential customers, about how you can do AI safely and effectively, and why that means that, us as a particular vendor, in their case, are even more relevant to them now, not less relevant. Because there's a lot of fear, uncertainty, and doubt, FUD kind of messaging in the marketplace. So that was all really good. I had two parts to the talk, a really positive thing about that, and talked about the weaknesses of AI and, where humans are absolutely needed and play a role, and where they are as a vendor. But I had a second part of the talk about a personal perspective, because they wanted to know, what does this really mean for our kids? What should our kids focus on for work? What does this really mean for society? So my challenge as a speaker was that message is pretty negative, because in my 4 years of research, I've found almost nobody that deeply understands AI that is optimistic. They all think that this could end really badly for us.
Okay. Well, that's not good.
Wow.
So to flip it back to something positive, you obviously spoke about the human role at this company. What were a couple of things that you believe is still the role of humans at this point?
Well, the way that all of us can thrive at the moment in the age of machine intelligence is to what I describe as become a little cyborg. So we need to create a mashup of our own tech stack. So Carmen, I'm sure you're doing this in producing a podcast, right? There's amazing AI tools that are embedded in Riverside and the other platforms that you use that can really help with all of this, creating thumbnails for videos and images and editing and doing all the sound engineering work automatically. So we can use tools well and then focus on the things that only a human can do well. So things like creativity, transferring belief, navigating complex politics and gathering consensus for some sort of decision in an organization, building a business case, fun and humor, like all of these things are the domain of humans. So for all of us to thrive in our role, there's a couple of things. First thing is become a little cyborg and use technology to do what it does well, and you focus on the human pieces and develop a superhuman level of output and performance. And then the other piece is go and own customer-facing relationships. If you're just executing a task in the back office and that task can be automated, I gave the example earlier of accounts payable, like the process of receiving invoices and looking at them and putting data in, well, machines do all that really well, and machines will now start phoning customers who haven't paid their bill and chasing them for money. And right, so even those things will go away. But if you if you just think about what do my customers value and focus especially on trust, because people are going to lose trust in information sources as all of this fake AI is just going to become pervasive. People will think, well, look, I don't know what to trust, but I trust this person, right? If this person has an opinion, I know I can trust that opinion. I can't just go online. We know that AI hallucinates. It's always confident and regularly wrong. So that's kind of the message for us at the moment.
I love that. Confident and regularly wrong, and often tells you what you want to hear.
Yes.
Oh, Carmen, that's a great idea. I'm like, great, but what if it's not a great idea? What else might we do? Tony, it has been such a pleasure having you on. I could talk to you for hours because it's been so interesting, everything that you've had to say. I'll have to grab a copy of your book. And for anyone that's listening, let's buy Sentient, Meet Your Maker. I believe it's available on many platforms. Do you want to let us know where we can purchase that, Tony, and how someone might reach out if they want to book you for speaking as well?
Yeah, so the book's available on Amazon is the best place to actually get the book. I put up a dedicated website for the book that's got lots of informative videos. So if you're wanting to better understand AI and the risks that we all need to be aware of, sentientbook.com. Sentientbook.com is the website. My speaker website is tonyhughes.com.au. You can obviously find me in LinkedIn. So you can find me in LinkedIn as well. And Carmen, thank you so much for inviting me on. I've loved the conversation with you, and I love what you're doing in helping the speaking community. So thank you so much.
My pleasure. All right, here's where you're standing. You can close this episode, think that was fun, and go back to doing things the way you've always done them. Or you can decide you're done being the speaker, the leader that people politely applaud and immediately forget. If you want to create the kind of moments we talked about today, the theatrical, the unforgettable, the profitable, I've put together something that'll change how you think about the stage forever. It's called Beyond the Keynote, Creating Your Illuminated Story. No fluff, no theory, just methodology I use with elite speakers and leaders who are done playing small. Go to illuminatedstory.com/masterclass. And hey, if this episode hit you somewhere, share it, leave a review. It takes 30 seconds and helps more people discover that great speaking isn't magic. It's a game and you can learn to win it. I'm Carmen Sederino. Don't just speak, illuminate. See you next week.